Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends. Tales from the Rails. Episode 18. The Review Critic. On the island of Sodor, there are many engines that love to be busy. Some do not, however. But every engine tries their best to stay busy and to please your Topham Hatt. And after a long day of work, Thomas and his friends are gathered at sheds to rest for the rest of the night. And one early morning, Sir Topham Hatt came racing to the sheds in his car. And when he arrived, the engines were sleeping soundly in the sheds. Sir Topham Hatt walked out of his car and onto the turntable. He shouted with a loud, booming voice, "Good morning, engines!" Gordon woke with a start. He jumped forward. "Whoa," said Gordon. "Who was that?" "Oh, good morning, Sir Topham Hatt." Slowly and surely, the rest of the engines woke. "Now," said Sir Topham Hatt, "let's get to the point of why I came here. Someone special is coming to the island today. He is a review critic, not an engine inspector. This critic could either help the island or affect the island. We need to put on our best behavior and our best work today, as if this goes badly, our own railway here could be doomed. This reviewer is very popular." "Reviewer," said Gordon. "So, critic. Indeed, a review critic. Okay," said Gordon, "this makes sense now. Do you want me to pull the coach that arrives today? He will arrive at Brendam Docks, but Spencer will be taking him in the Duke and Duchess's coach." James groaned. Why does Spencer get to take the coach? He's not even a Sodor engine. I'm a Sodor engine with splendid paintwork. I should be able to take that. Just then, Spencer came racing into the sheds. "Guess what, engines of Sodor?" he said. "I am taking the review critic around the island and picking him up at Brendam Docks. I hope everybody here is jealous, because this job is extremely important, and only a certain special engine will be able to take him." James complained even more. "You're not even a Sodor engine," said James crossly. "I am so," said Sir Spencer. "I was bought by the Duke and Duchesses, and they are living here for quite a while, so why don't I call myself part of the railway?" All right, said Sir Topham Hatt. "Enough with the bickering. I have made my decision, and this decision is clear. Now everybody put on their best work today. Put on your best behavior too. This is going to be one great review." And with this, Sir Topham Hatt joined Spencer in his coach to greet the critic. The engines of Sodor were very upset. Henry said, "I think I should be able to pull it. I am a very strong engine, and he will be very impressed by my strength." "I think I should pull it," said Edward. "I am a vintage engine and an old engine, yet really reliable and useful." Thomas and Percy both didn't care. "Does it matter?" they say. How about we all, correcting themselves, "we all put on our best performance." "Nah," said James, "I'd rather put on my best performance in front, pulling the coach." They all began to fight again. Out of all the engines, Gordon stood up. "Stop feuding, all of you. You're going to create great havoc in this area, which will improve our grade from the critic. Now let's go. Let's get to work." "Gordon's right," said Thomas. "Let's go." The critic soon arrived. Said the critic. "Acceptable dockside area. I've seen better. Now let's go, Sir Topham Hatt, or Sir so-called controller." The critic walked into the coach. Sir Topham Hatt was not pleased already. "This will not be good," he said, turning into the coach. Spencer started the tour, but all the critic could do was criticize. He even criticized Spencer's speed. "You're going too fast," he said. The critic saw everything, from engines not working to engines that were waiting for signals to change. But all it was criticize, and criticize. Soon enough, lots of the engines arrived at Knapford to meet the critic. "I hope the critic admires the heavy passenger train that I pull, as called the Express." "I hope that critic admires my shiny red paintwork," said James. I hope the critic admires Annie and Clarabelle. I hope the critic admires everything on the island, said Toby. And this admiring continued. Henry was saying his turn of what the critic hope he admires, as going around for the 5th time. Just then Edward shouted out, "Here he comes!" And Spencer and the critic arrived. The critic and Sir Topham Hatt walked out of the coach. "This is Knapford Station," he said, "where most passengers are picked up. It is our biggest station on the island, and is the busiest. It also contains my office inside. Would you like to see the office?" "No, most certainly not," said the critic. "I am here to see the railway, not some minor details." Spencer whispered to Edward. "He has been so rude," said Spencer. "All he does is criticize. He doesn't like anything." Edward spread this to Oliver, Oliver to Percy, Percy to Henry, Henry to Toby, Toby to Thomas, Gordon, and then James. The engines whispered among each other about the news they just heard until Sir Topham finally said, "Meet our steam team," he said. "Oh, I've heard about your steam team. The engine with 2 shiny paintwork? The express engine that can't even pull enough coaches? The rude tank engine? The old steam tram? Henry, they say, is fine, but has boiler aches, which causes him to delay his work. Percy, who can barely even pull his mill coach." "Hey," said Percy, "I can too." Oliver, who should have been scrapped. And Edward, who's a vintage engine. "Oh," said the Topham. "Okay, that's all you need to see here." "All right," he said, "to the next location." And with that, the two got back into the coach, and Spencer chuffed away. James went ballistic when Spencer left. "Are you kidding me?" he said. "Paintwork too shiny? That's impossible. I thought he'd admire it." Gordon was even more cross. "Express engines are supposed to pull this amount of coaches. I have been to the mainland and to England before. These are the normal amount." Thomas was confused. The rude tank engine? "I try to be polite as I can every day." "Yes," said the two that were just rumbling. Just then Toby spoke up. He said I was too old. Toby, his feelings were very hurt. Henry said, "He said I was fine other than my boiler aches, but I can't cause anything, nothing can cause me to do that." "He said my coaches were too heavy," said Percy. "The scrap engine," said Oliver. "Ha! I would have been done if it wasn't for Douglas to save me." Edward said, "I'm a vintage engine." I'm quite fine with what he said, but yet he did seem to say it sarcastically, which means I was too old to work. "I'm with you, Toby." Toby sighed. The engines continued their work, while Spencer toured the island with the critic. Soon enough, the tour ended, and the critic was pretty pessimistic about the island. He said, I give it an average. The island was okay. There were some good things, and definitely some bad things, but acceptable. With this, the critic aborted his ship, and the ship stormed out of the docks. "What just happened?" said Spencer. "I don't know," said Sir Topham Hatt. "That critic was so pessimistic. I can't believe how mean he was. I'm not even sure if that was the real critic." "Indeed he was," said Spencer. "Indeed it was. But we'll have to see what the reviews bring tonight." Later that night, when all the engines returned to the shed, all they could do was talk bad about the critic. He was so rude, mentioned by all the engines. He criticized everything, until Edward spoke up about something different. "I hear tonight Stepney is going to take Sir Topham Hatt to his office in Elsbridge, and there he will find out about the review critic and his final grade." So one by one the engines fell asleep, except for Thomas. He waited for Stepney to come by. Later that night, Stepney came racing past with Sir Topham Hatt. Little did he know that Thomas was still awake. The turntable set itself for Thomas's berth, and Thomas puffed after Stepney. When Thomas arrived, Stepney was there, of course, but he didn't know Stepney heard a little chuff. "Hello? Who's there? Is that a tank engine? Oh, that's Thomas. Thomas, come out where you're hiding." And Thomas puffed out. "Oh, hello, Stepney." "Hello, Thomas. I knew you'd be sneaking out here tonight. You're a cheeky little engine, aren't you? Indeed I am, said Thomas. I just really want to find out that grade. I'm really nervous about it. It won't affect anything, said Stepney. That critic was so mean, even the passengers realized it. Yeah, said Thomas. Anyway, said Stepney, you should get back to sleep. Sir Topham Hatt told every one of his engines he'll tell the grade in the morning. Okay, said Thomas, and with that, he buffed back to the sheds. But Stepney was too nervous. I am nervous indeed, said Stepney. What happens if the grade does go bad? You never know what might happen. Early the next morning, Stepney arrived with Sir Topham Hatt. Sir Topham Hatt walked out of the coach and onto a platform. As you may know, he said, the critics' review grade came in last night, and some of the engines smiled, some of the engines frowned. It didn't turn out too well, said Sir Topham Hatt. We scored 152 points out of 300 points. The engine's face dropped. Oh my, said the engines. That's nearly 50%. 51 to be exact, said Toby. I know this grade was low, said Sir Topham Hatt, but we have to continue on with our work anyways. So today, let's do our best, no matter what that critic said. All right, said the engines, and with that, they went off to work. Later that morning, Thomas was taking Annie and Clarabelle on his branch line for the first run of the day. Thomas coupled up to his coaches to realize they seemed a little light. Said Thomas. Am I early? No, said Annie. You're actually right on time. Why aren't there a lot of passengers today? I don't know, said Annie. You never know what might be happening. Today might be a holiday, or no, said Thomas. It must be the critic. Oh no, the reviews must have kicked in. The guard blew his whistle and Thomas puffed away. It was easy for him to speed out of the station with a light load. Trains continued all day, but even the express seemed light. And not as many trains had to be taken. Many of the engines were confused. The afternoon trains soon arrived, as Toby with Henrietta, Thomas with Andy and Clarabelle, Gordon with the express, and James with the Nafford Express coach. They all talked about the morning. My train seemed a little light this morning, said Thomas. Me too, said Gordon. Is this strange? No, said James. Maybe just people had a rough night, or something like that. Or, maybe they stood up all night, waiting for the critic. That's it, said Toby. It was the critic. His bad review must have brought Sodor down. No, said Thomas, that can't be. Come on, everybody saw how mean that critic was. You never know, said James. That critic was very popular. That's right, said Thomas. The guard's whistle blew. James puffed out of the station. I still think his statement is false, said Gordon, but I need to go too. Gordon puffed out of the station too. This only left Thomas and Toby. You never know what people might think, said Toby. They may think that the internet is correct, and everything they read on the internet is true, or they may not. That's why we have faithful passengers. They're still in the coaches right now. Yeah, said Thomas. Those are some good words, Toby. Thanks for the advice. Even if the trains were light, the engines didn't care. They had to continue on with their work. Soon enough, they found out that the same critic that reviewed their island reviewed the mainland, and they scored even lower than Sodor. The next day, after that review happened, more passengers returned to the coaches for the morning trains. Soon enough, the engines heard of the critic had reviewed another island far away a couple days later from the mainland review. This scored even lower than the previous two, and all the passengers that had gone away returned to the regular trains, and the name of the critic was never heard of again on the island of Sodor.